Hello, welcome back to my world of stuff. Today's video is slightly different to what I normally do on this channel. I normally talk about cult stuff, cult TV, Doctor Who films, fantasy type stuff, because that's my preferred form of entertainment. I'll watch dramas, I'll watch comedies, but I tend to sort of gravitate towards speculative, imaginative fiction because that's the way my mind works. It's the way I'm wired. But I want to talk about last night's Gavin and Stacy Christmas special. Now again, totally outside the wheelhouse of this channel, but I want to talk about it because Gavin and Stacy is a very special TV show, very important TV show. And I don't think we've really realised quite how important it is, and we won't realise how important it is until we step back and think, we're never going to have a comedy series like that again. We're never going to have a comedy series that resonates with people the way that this does and has across the years. And the finale that was screened Christmas Day yesterday on BBC One was perfect end to a great series. A 90-minute special which did everything you would want it to do and more. It did lots of things you didn't necessarily think it was going to do. Most of my viewers are in the UK, so you will know Gavin and Stacy, but for anybody who doesn't know it, it started in 2008. It was created by Ruth Jones and James Corden. It was aired on the small digital channel BBC Three. And it was a comedy of relationships. It was a comedy about basically two families. Family in Barry Island in Wales, family in Billericay in Essex, and how they came together when two young members of the family, Gavin, played by Matthew Horn, and Stacey, played by Joanna Page, had been conducting a sort of long-distance phone relationship where they got to know each other and were interested in one another and fancied one another. And they ended in a meeting where Stacey travelled up to London to meet Gavin, and they started their relationship. But they took their friends with them. Gavin took his friend Smithy, played by James Corden, and Stacey took her friend Nessa, played by Ruth Jones. And this started this long-running story of the Gavin and Stacey relationship, which was at the core of everything, and introduced their extended family of characters around them. Stacey's mother Gwen, Gavin's parents Pam and Mick, and various other characters who sort of gravitated around them. And across 3 series and a Christmas special, the show grew in popularity very quickly. I remember watching those first 2 episodes in 2008 on a Sunday night because they showed the first 2 in a double bill. Watching it thinking, this is good. This is a feel-good, slightly brittle, edgy comedy, relationship comedy, but I think this is going to do well. And of course, it quickly moved over to BBC One, became a massive hit, finished after its 3rd series, and then came back for a Christmas special in 2019, and came back for a final Christmas special and a final finale, which aired yesterday on BBC One. And this has been a massive talking point over the last few weeks. Since it was announced this was coming back in the summer, when filming started in September, October, build up for this has been extraordinary. It's been a massive topic of conversation. What's going to happen? Will it resolve the cliffhanger from the Christmas special from 2019? There's always been this sort of love-hate relationship between Smithy and Nessa. Nessa had become pregnant after that first meeting in London, and she had a baby, Neil, the baby. And although Smithy and Nessa were never together, they would meet up. They had to meet up when the families came together for various events, and he was responsible for contributing towards the upkeep of Neil, the baby, as the series went on and as the years rolled by. And what we've seen as the series has come back occasionally is the characters maturing and aging and becoming more settled in themselves and becoming more aware of their responsibilities and more aware of the relationships. What works about Gavin and Stacy, what has always worked about Gavin and Stacy, what I've always liked about Gavin and Stacy, is it's about family. It's about that special relationship, that special bond that families have and friends. And I think that is so warm and so embracing, and watching shows like Gavin and Stacy make you feel like you're part of that family. You feel like you're with them and you enjoy being with them and you enjoy their little quirks and their little foibles and their little habits and the things they do and the things they say. Because Gavin and Stacy isn't necessarily about jokes. People aren't wandering in cracking, my mother-in-law. It's not that sort of thing. The humour arises from the characters and the situations, and you get to know the characters, and you know the way they're going to react to certain things, and you know how they behave, because they are written in a way that they're like real people. And that is the strength of great comedy, great family comedy. And I'm thinking in terms of other recent shows, like Friday Night Dinner was another one which I felt had the same warmth to it. And it was like an embrace, a hug of a series that you felt for half an hour you're having a good time with slightly quirky friends, slightly unusual friends. And things like going back to Only Fools and Horses was much the same. You were with the Trotter family and you went through their lives and their ups and downs and their arguments and their rows and their disappointments and disagreements. But they always came back together. And I think that's the mark of great British comedy. And British comedy at its best is able to do that. And I think the finale of Gavin and Stacy last night was a masterpiece. I think it was more than anyone could have hoped for in the final episode of Gavin and Stacy, because it gave you all the characters that you love, and it gave you an extended 90-minute episode. It gave all the characters time to breathe, all the characters time to have their moments. And when I heard it was going to be a 90-minute episode, I was like, oh, that seems like a very long time for a comedy. And I did think perhaps the BBC could have split it in half and had two 45-minute episodes, one on Christmas Eve and one on Christmas night. And I was looking at the clock actually, at the 45-minute point, there was a possible natural break. But I do think, having watched the whole thing, it would have disrupted the flow and the build-up of what was going on in the episode and what we were heading towards. And we all knew what we were heading towards. So I think as a 90-minute special, it didn't sag as I thought it would. And it did allow more breathing space for all the characters, as I say, to have their little plot strands and their little moments that gave them closure in television terms. In terms of the story itself, we're 5 years on from the end of the previous episode. It transpires that Smithy never gave an answer to Nessa, to her proposal, because he was interrupted by Gavin. He went back into the house. The moment was never referred to again and never returned to. Time has moved on. In the first great surprise of the episode, and incidentally, if you haven't seen the episode, I will put a spoiler in the description of the video, but I'm going to talk about things which are spoilers if you've not seen it yet. We discovered in the beginning of the episode that we're heading towards a wedding. Somebody's getting married. It's Smithy's getting married to somebody. And we're sort of led down the garden path to think that he is going to marry Nessa. But no, he's not. He's marrying the appalling Sonia, played by Laura Aiken, who's returning from the 2019 episode. This is a masterstroke because nobody knew she was in this episode. It was an incredibly well-kept secret. And these days with television, especially a show like Gavin and Stacy, which is so beloved and people are so interested and so nosy about what's going to happen and so invested in it. It's incredible that they kept her appearance in the episode a secret. And I've been looking overnight and this morning that during the filming a few months ago, she was staying in a different hotel in South Wales to the rest of the cast. They went to huge pains to make sure that nobody knew she was there. She obviously signed an NDA. She didn't even tell her family. And she's posted a very nice clip on Instagram this morning of the family watching Gavin and Stacy. When she appears, they're all stunned and shocked and screaming because they didn't know she was in it. I think in this day and age, keeping any secret for any TV show or film really is quite an achievement, because information leaks. People speak out of turn. People watching location film will see things happening, and it's all out there. So I think it was incredible that they kept that a secret. So the first half of the story is very much the build-up to the wedding, which is coming. Smithy and Sonia's wedding. And we have a very funny first sequence, which is the Barry lot, as they're called, going to Essex to stay at Pam and Mick's house in Billericay, and them having a huge party, getting very drunk, Smithy missing his appointment to get his suit fitted, and the stag night. And there's lots of lovely little bits in relation to that sort of thing. The stag night, and then the wedding itself. And everybody knows that Smithy shouldn't be marrying Sonia, but nobody's got the guts or the nerve to tell him. It's his choice, it's his decision. He wants to marry this woman. But the Barry lot, they all know that that's wrong, that these two don't belong together. Nessa, meanwhile, Ruth Jones, has decided that she needs time away from the situation. She can't really cope with the fact that Smithy is marrying somebody else. So she's gone back on the ships, because one of the great joys and the humour of Nessa is that she's done everything. She's had all this incredible life, which sounds incredibly far-fetched and unbelievable. But there's always somebody around who will verify that, yes, she did do this, or these things did actually happen. Nessa is of unspecified age. At one point, she says she's 29, and at other points, there's references to her being in her 50s. So, you know, Nessa is an incredible comic creation by Ruth Jones. Much mimicked, but never bettered than her performance. She brings that sort of very odd Welsh charm to the character. It's a classic comic creation. But she's going to move away. But of course, things resolve as we know they're going to resolve, because that's what we want. And I think there was a lot of speculation before the episode aired about somebody's going to die, Gavin's going to die, Gavin and Stacey are going to split up. And I went along with it for a little bit, because there was sort of talk about something that was going to happen to Stacey's mother, Gwen, played by Melanie Walters. And I'd heard comments from her saying, oh, this is very much the end, Gwen's final lines. And I thought that perhaps there was going to be some big emotional thing that brings everybody together. But of course that didn't happen, because that is not what this show is about. It's not about tragedy. It's not about grief. It's not about death. It's about life. It very much celebrates life and family and people for all their frustrations and the irritating things they may do. It's about people who need each other or want to be with each other. It's not about death and tragedy and misery. It's joyous. It's a celebration of a very special, very British thing. And of course it ended the way we knew it was going to end. The end was pitch perfect. And I'm not going to go into exactly what it was, because you can watch it. I would urge you to watch it. It's beautiful, poignant, and which is an end, and it feels like a complete line under the show, because there is no need to go back to these characters now. If you went back to them now, you'd be reopening something which has got a nice bow around it. It's very much everybody lived happily ever after, and that's exactly what was needed for this show. But the things I really liked about it during the episode were the fact that it acknowledged the passage of time. It acknowledged people getting older. You have Pam and Mick. You watch them at the beginning of the series. They're in their late 50s. They're still sort of vibrant, and they're still, quite with it. Now, in this last episode, they're visibly much older. Larry Lamb particularly, I think, looked a lot older as Mick. He's now retired. He's at home getting underfoot. Pam wants him out of the way. But I think the most affecting scenes for me were sort of the stag night scenes with Gavin and Stacy and their friends, including Budgie, Russell Tovey returning to the fold after years away, Samuel Anderson. Lots of characters that we saw in the first couple of series brought back for this final hurrah. And they go out on a stag night, and they're in a nightclub, and they're all in their 40s now, and it's not for them. It's not their life anymore. And they're just feeling it. They're feeling their age. They've all got families and responsibilities and things. They're not the carefree kids they were in the first series. And I think that was really well observed. They don't fit into that world anymore. And a lot of them went home early because it's just not their thing. That sort of behaviour isn't what people do in their 40s. And as somebody much older than that, who used to go to clubs and that sort of thing, it would be my idea of hell now, going to a nightclub for all sorts of reasons. But I'm totally too old for it. And it's interesting to see the show reflecting that. And it is very much a show, this episode particularly reflected the characters getting older and becoming more settled, becoming more mature, and not doing the things they did in the early episodes. And you can see that across the 3 series, the specials, that maturity of the characters, the maturity in the writing. The writing on this was absolutely spot on. Everybody had a great moment. Even minor characters, Jason Rob Wilford, who is Gwen's son. There's this constant joke about the fishing trip that he went on with Uncle Bryn, played brilliantly by Rob Brydon. That's always been a running joke. What happened on the fishing trip? Something happened between these two men on this fishing trip. And it's always been alluded to. It's always something sort of shameful. But we've never found out what it is. And again, in the build-up to the episode, so many people say, we've got to find out what happens on the fishing trip. No, that's a joke. That is a joke. Something happened on the fishing trip. We don't know what. We don't need to know, because then the joke's over. And this is a joke now which carries on beyond the series, because there was a moment when, again, several times in the series, there would be points where it looked as if somebody was going to say something. But they didn't. And I think that's clever writing. And this show is full of clever writing. This particular episode was full of references to earlier things in the series, earlier events, characters. The continuity in the series is very tight and very well observed. And the characters, as I said, it's not about telling jokes. It's about the humour of the characters. Dawn and Pete, Julia Davis and Adrian Scarborough, who've been this bickering couple who are friends of Pam and Mick. They've now divorced, but she can't let him go. She's watching him, and she's obsessed with him, but he's moved on. But events bring them back together in this, whether he wants them to or not. And we get lots of return appearances. Pam Ferris is back as Smithy's mother. We haven't seen her since series 2 or 3. Sheridan Smith is back as Rudy, Smithy's sister. She's back for just a brief appearance, really. But it's nice that there are these nods to characters that we haven't seen for years. And that's what the show ultimately did. It was a love letter to itself, for us, for the fans, to embrace all these characters one last time. Even characters that we haven't seen for years. Characters we've forgotten. But it shows that this is a world. Gavin and Stacey's world is real in itself. It was great. I just thought this was a masterful piece of very well considered, very well judged comedy with these veins of huge emotion running right through it for lots of characters. To see Gwen in a new relationship, Gwen, the widow who spends her time making omelettes, she's suddenly become a passionate woman in love. Gavin and Stacy, who have sort of become slightly sidelined in their own series, really, because the show is now really about Nessa and Smithy. But Gavin and Stacy, as the couple who brought all these people together, they're the sort of the linchpins of the series in a way. They're there. They don't have major storylines. There's a little frippery here about them spicing up their love life by doing a bit of role play. But that was just something for them to do because they were very much on the outside of it in a way. But yeah, it's interesting that it is Gavin who ultimately brings the situation with Smithy to a head. He's the one who speaks up in the church. At Stacey's request, really, he realises that this is the wrong thing. Although the show is Gavin and Stacey, it's not about Gavin and Stacey as such. It's about them and their world and their friends and their family and their people. And I can't imagine a better and more emotionally fulfilling way for one of the great British comedy series of all time to bring the curtain down on itself. We will not see its like again. Modern comedy shows are very different. They're very edgy and they're trying to be different and they're trying to appeal to certain demographics and they're very issue-led. You don't have a simple, warm family comedies like this anymore because comedy has become fractured and it isn't about necessarily drawing a big audience in. It's about saying, well, this is, this is about this is about that, this is about this. Not about people. It's about the issues surrounding people in certain circumstances. And so you will never get comedies of this nature, comedies that bring people together in this way. You won't get it again because people aren't commissioning these sort of comedies. I do hope that BBC's comedy department will look at shows like this and think, well, we need more of this. So ultimately, this was a perfect finale for a terrific series. It's just beautifully written, beautifully performed, and made with love and attention and care. And I don't think we get that anymore. There are a lot of comedies out there now, and I try to look at new comedies, especially British comedies, because I've always loved classic British comedies, the old stuff from the 60s and 70s. I love things like The Office and things like Friday Night Dinner. There's been less and less essential comedy because things have moved away to being more, we've got to make a comedy that focuses on this. We've got to make a comedy with characters who are like this, rather than people, real, believable people. They've got to have their little things, their little foibles, their little contemporary issues. I would like to have more comedies where you like the characters more, and they're not angry and ranting and kicking against authority or fighting against issues. Let's have a comedy about people and being nice. And that's what Gavin and Stacy did so well, and I think we miss that sort of thing these days, and I think we need more of it. Gavin and Stacy was a superb finale. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. So if you've watched Gavin and Stacy ever, or this finale, please leave a comment down below. Like and subscribe to the channel, because I do all sorts of stuff here, and I don't always do sitcoms. But I think that this is a special piece of television that I wanted to talk about, because I thought it was a fantastic piece of television. It is one of those sort of things that I was looking at the clock to see how much was left, because I didn't want it to end. It was 90 minutes, and I enjoyed spending time with these people one last time. A great episode. Thank you for watching. Normal service will be resumed in future videos. Coming up in the next few days will be my top 10 films of the year, and a couple of honourable mentions and a few stinkers, and of course my top 10 TV shows of the year. Likewise, stinkers and honourable mentions. So stick around for more stuff coming up soon. I will see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.